Good morning, guys. Welcome to Tuesday. I'm Marshall Burtcher. If you don't know me, I help codependents, people pleasers, survivors of narcissistic abuse rediscover their value, their voice, and their vision, and reclaim their happiness from their abuse. And really just take back life, become who they truly are, and access that brilliance. So before we jump into today's topic, which is about trust, I just need to make sure that this is shared to the community. If you're looking for a place where you can have expert guidance from me and others, also connection, support, and validation so you don't feel crazy anymore, join the community. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. So let me get this shared out to there. And there we are. There we go. All right. I just gotta type a few thingies real quick, and then we'll do this. How was your guys' weekend? Mine was dandy. I really enjoyed it. All right, there we go. Got out, saw a couple movies, did my thing, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so hi, Connie. Hi, Stephanie. Good morning. So let's talk about trust, because I got this question last week in the community, and I realized I hadn't made a really just discrete video on it, one just really dedicated to the concept of trust. So what is trust? Trust is giving someone the opportunity to know us, to see us. It's vulnerability, but it also presents a risk to us initially because we're revealing ourselves in a way that could end up hurting us. We could be hurt in that. So it's a delicate thing to do. It's offering something that puts into our lives a little risk. Like if I show or reveal these kinds of feelings, I could get hurt. So trust is giving someone something that is delicate to us, and in the hopes or in the expectation, the assumption really, that they're going to cherish it, they're going to respect it, they're going to at least at a minimum respect it, but maybe cherish it or even value it and honor it. Okay, so trust is delicate, and trust is also the space between, it fills the gap between who we think the person is and who they are, because we can't fundamentally know someone entirely, right? Because we can't be in their head, can't be in their heart. So what they do and what they say really matters, because those are the things that we depend on in order to understand who this person is at the level of like character. And so trust is this, fills in the gap between what we perceive them to be and who they are. We trust that they are that, right? We expect that they will. We have the assumption that they'll maintain this pattern of behavior and personality. And this is, when we get into attachment theory, what this is actually doing is creating what's called a stable object, a stable reference point for this in our mind about this person. So we know that if we're going to interact with this individual, we can predict a certain kind of behavior from them based on their past patterns of behavior. So that helps us either generate what's called secure attachment, or what's called anxious or avoidant attachment, and then what's called disfigured. It's complex is the other word for complex attachment or disorganized attachment. And in that, there's various degrees and combinations of things. But fundamentally, trust is really important in our ability to generate attachment and then mature that attachment into a stable bond where we feel safe to be seen, safe to share, safe to play, and safe to lean on them, to have needs met, to have wants met, to be connected with, right? And so that's what trust is, and it's vital to a relationship. You don't get anywhere in a relationship without trust, period. You gotta have it, or it's not gonna work, okay? All right. So that's what trust is. So how do you build trust? I'm a big fan of Brene Brown's braving model on trust. I learned this through taking a training from her called The Anatomy of Trust. And basically breaks down into 7 different principles. And I use these 7 principles as the fundamental essentials that a person must possess for me to have any kind of consistent relationship or friendship with them. You know, even if you're going to be in the world of acquaintance, if you don't have these traits, I'm not going to do a whole lot with you. These are fundamentals. These are not ideals. These are not things we should strive for. These are things that we should show up in our relationships with already operating, and that the people we have in our relationship, that we have in our lives, should already show up with these operating. If they don't waste your time. You're not here to raise somebody else's child. You've got a life to live. These are grown-ass adults. They're not going to show up with these 7 principles. Move on. There's better, more high-quality fish in the sea that way. So, all right. So the 7 components of trust are B for braving, or B for boundaries, rather. Now, boundaries are important, all right? They help define us from others. They establish the prerequisites for what our happiness is. They provide protection, but they also provide means for connection, intimacy, and understanding. Because boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are fences, and in fences they have gates. So boundary defines territory. This is mine, that is yours. Okay? It can be a yes, it can be a no. It can be about ownership. Hey, those are your feelings. I understand that you feel that way. You know, you're going to have to work those feelings out, though, especially if it's something that I didn't do. I have no role in, that kind of thing. So really important there. So B for boundaries, and there's 3 things I look at this. Anytime I look at trust, there's 3 people involved, or 3 directions involved. There's me to myself, me to them, and them to me. Okay? So am I honoring my boundaries? Am I having respect and integrity to my boundaries? Do I even know what my boundaries are? Am I acknowledging them? Am I communicating and advocating for them? Are they communicating what their boundaries are? Are they advocating for those boundaries? Am I advocating my boundaries with them? Are they respecting my boundaries? Right? Those kind of things. We want to see what's going on there. Because if people don't know how to communicate their boundaries, they often don't know what those boundaries are to begin with, and then you're going to have a problem because you're going to get this thing called blurry lines, and blurry lines lead to confusion, frustration, resentment, anger, unnecessary conflict, that kind of thing. The more direct, clear, and simple you become about your boundaries, the more direct, clear, and simple your relationships will be, and you're going to have a lot more fun, a lot more happiness in what you're doing. Okay? So B for boundaries. R for reliability. Very, very important. Are they reliable? Do they consistently show up in a certain way? Now, consistency does not mean 100%. Consistency means 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times. You start getting towards 7 or 6 out of 10 times, you're dealing with someone who they're trying, but they've got some stuff to work out to raise that up to 8 or 9. We want high levels of predictability. We do not want 100%. 100% is not realistic. This leads to problems. This leads to judgment. This leads to resentment, because then you're dealing with a people pleaser. You're dealing with someone who's actually not advocating for themselves. You should, and plus they're not being human. We deserve the capacity to make mistakes and to fall a bit off the wagon. We deserve the capacity, or what's called positive warm regard, to deal with those things. But it needs to be rare. 1 or 2 out of 10 times kind of thing. So reliability. So are they predictable in how they respond to things? So, and obviously, guys, you can define a person with healthy thinking and behaviors and beliefs and actions, and you can define someone with toxic behaviors and toxic behavior patterns based on these 7 principles. Because if the toxic person isn't going to respect your boundaries consistently, right? The toxic person's not going to be reliable in owning their shit or showing up. They're going to be flaky on you. They're not going to take ownership. They're going to blame and all that stuff. So, and when I say showing up, reliably, I don't mean time like they're on time, because certain brains don't interpret time the same way as other brains do. So that is not a factor there in my book. All right. So R for reliability, A for accountability. Do they take accountability for their behaviors, choices, actions, feelings, and desires? Am I taking accountability for my desires, feelings, actions, choices? Am I taking responsibility with myself for the way I treat myself, for the choices I make, for the desires I have, for the feelings I have? Or am I waiting for someone else to do them for me? And am I advocating and taking responsibility with the other person for those things, and are they doing the same with me? Because if we have accountability, immediately the world gets a lot safer, because now we can confront problems reliably. We can deal with conflict reliably. Disappointment, confusion, complaints can be respected. Because intimacy is built in the shit, my friends. It's built in the difficulties. It's built in the difference and the disagreement. Intimacy occurs in the space of conflict. So if we're going to build real trust and real intimacy, we need to make it safe to have conflict. This is why you can't have trust and intimacy that's safe with people who have toxic behavior patterns or have narcissistic traits, because they're just going to buck at that accountability. They're going to make it verbally or emotionally or sometimes physically violent, because their shame and their encoding programming makes it impossible for them to actually take positive accountability. This is why I don't recommend staying in those relationships, because they're not functional relationships. They're stable dysfunction, and you're just going to get more pain. All right, so that's accountability. V for vault. So vault is interesting. Do I keep what I want to keep private? Or do I go out and share my secrets with everyone that I don't want to actually share? Am I keeping private what others contribute or invest or confide in me? Really, really important there. Are others keeping my stuff private too? Vault. Ultimately, you'll know the vault is compromised because the other person's gossiping or spreading something around about you. And you usually don't find out until things are really bad, and that can be in a huge... That just destroys trust. When you violate the vault, the game's over. Interestingly enough, that one's a much more discreet shattering of trust than accountability. All right. So you have B for boundaries, R for reliability, A for accountability, V for vault, and then you have I for integrity. Integrity is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It's direct, clear, and simple. Do they keep their word? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Do they do it consistently? And when they don't do it, because eventually you won't do it, because we're all human, do they take accountability for it? And if they're reliable in taking accountability for when they breach their integrity, now you have someone that you can rely on, because they're going to be, one, human, but two, trustworthy, because they take ownership, they change their behaviors. You get a different result down the road. That's really important. Fundamentally, reliability, accountability, and integrity define the character of the person. That's who they want to be. So if they're going to lack these three elements, they're communicating to you that they don't understand or value trust. They don't understand and value these things personally. They'll probably say that they do. Oh, but of course I value this. But if their behaviors don't match their words, you don't know who they are. You don't know what to depend on. And that creates a huge amount of chaos and unreliability. And that leads to blurred lines and to gaslighting and to feeling crazy. Life is shit. Direct, clear, and simple relationships will always be reliable, accountable, and have integrity. There you go. So, questions to ask. Do I have integrity with my own word? Am I keeping my word? Am I keeping my agreements? When I have an agreement I no longer want to maintain, am I communicating that and advocating for a change? Because, guys, commitments are not permanent. You can change your commitments anytime you want, because it's your commitment. So you do it. You maintain that for you. Okay? So commitment, do I want to change it? When I screw up, do I take ownership of it? Am I accountable? And then do I express empathy, remorse? Do I take responsibility? Do I attempt to make a repair? Am I doing that with myself? Am I doing that with them? And are they doing that with me? Really, 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 really important. You gotta understand that if it's not being done, they're not doing it with you, get the hell out of that relationship. Because you can't trust them. Period. It's this simple. Your feelings about them, the love you might have about them, the euphoria you might be in if you're dealing with love addiction. Sorry guys, your feelings are not truth. They're not reality. They're not facts. They're just your experience. But they're not reality. Patterns, persistent patterns of behavior tell the truth. And if in that pattern of behavior is the lack of integrity, you're setting yourself up for a really painful experience. Get out now. Okay. The next component, so we got boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity. Then we have what's called non-judgment. Non-judgment means, hey, I can share something that might be judge-worthy, or people have judged in the past with you, and you're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. That's interesting. You may not agree with it, but you don't criticize it. You don't attack it. You don't diminish the person because of where they're at with that thing. Okay? Non-judgment is typically about choices and actions, behaviors, preferences, desires, even feelings. And while we don't have to agree with them, we can practice non-judgment and saying, hey, I don't agree with that, but I understand where you're coming from. Okay? So we're not condemning the individual. Now, sometimes there are things in the world that do deserve pretty strong judgment. I'm a very strong advocate for certain things where I will judge because, hey, if you believe racism is good, judgment. If you appeal towards authoritarian or fascist concepts, judgment. Because these things harm people. And so I'm not a fan of things that harm people. Period. All right. So non-judgment. Do I feel safe to share sensitive things with them, and will they receive it? Am I being non-judgmental with the things they're contributing to me, and I'm being non-judgmental to me? Or am I trying to condemn myself for what I feel and what I believe and what I need and what I want, what I don't want, those kind of things? Really, really important there. Because if we're going to have self-trust, we got to contain these 7 principles too. So again, review. We've got our boundaries, we've got reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment. And now we have generosity. And generosity is really, really important. But I look at generosity in this equation, in this braving model, as a result of the 6 other components being alive in the relationship. Because this is where people dealing with the fawn response or codependency get really, really screwed, to be blunt. Okay? Generosity means giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, having what's called positive, warm regard for that individual. This basically means when they make a mistake, you're not interpreting it as something deliberate and violent against you. It's more like, okay, yeah, you had a bad day, let's talk about it. You assume that they're going to have an empathetic response. You assume they're going to take accountability. You assume that this is going to be a safe experience. Generosity tends to screw codependents over because you give people who have not earned generosity or the benefit of the doubt, you give it to them anyway. Okay? So, and we give it to people in places where they don't deserve it. Okay? When it comes to abusive behavior that violates your boundaries, your body, your identity, your person, that harms you emotionally, abuses you physically, emotionally, sexually, or verbally, that makes you feel scared, that makes you feel shameful as a person, that attacks you as a human being is very serious. I was watching Married at First Sight because I like my reality TV, and season 8, there's this individual that married Andrew, I think is his name. I don't remember her name because I'm really me and names, but he kissed her, and then he said, I feel dead inside. I feel repulsed. That's verbal abuse. Okay? This is different than, hey, I kissed you and I'm not really into you. There wasn't chemistry. That's really different. I didn't feel chemistry, right? that's just understandable. But to tell someone I'm repulsed by you, I feel dead inside because of you, that's emotional and verbal abuse. That's a deal breaker, guys. Abuse is a deal breaker. It's not something to tolerate. It's not something that deserves positive, warm regard. It doesn't deserve generosity. It deserves accountability. Now, if you're dating this person, get the hell out. Because if that's showing up in your dating experience, that's just going to get worse. Period. I'm not a fan. Dating is about discovering the who that fits the what and the how you want in your life. So if someone shows up with abusive, toxic behaviors in dating, time to go. Get out. But if you got an established, committed relationship, counseling, demand it. It's like, yeah, you screwed up, but that means counseling. That doesn't mean, oh, it's a one-off, I guess you had a bad day. It means counseling. And the reason why is because this shouldn't be showing up. This is showing up for some other reason, and it needs to be encountered at a deep and deliberate level. That's my limit there. If they're not willing to do counseling and work out their shit so they're no longer toxic, get the hell out. That's my take on it, because one, I was that in the past with my marriage. So I know where they're coming from. I know how people that give themselves permission that do as verbally abusive. And so my thinking was, well, I have trauma and I'm really angry and this is how I do it. I didn't understand that, hey, I could communicate this in a better way. My feelings were not the problem. My panic wasn't the problem. It was my skill set in communicating it. And it took a lot of pain to wake me up out of that, but it was very, very important. And what really tripped it was an individual I was dating, she drew the line and she left the relationship, and I'm like, I fucked up. I gotta change this. Okay? So guys, we have to wake up to this kind of behavior. Both if it's being done to us or if it's within us. Because even with, codependents sometimes absorb toxic behaviors from their abusers. I did, and then I put it on others, and that's really important to understand. We got to look at how we're showing up as well. That's why with this braving model, I'm asking you, well, how am I showing up? How am I showing up to myself? How am I showing up to them? And how are they showing up to me? But generosity is earned, and it's earned by a consistent, reliable pattern of behaviors through these 6 other traits. So don't give people the benefit of the doubt. If abuse shows up, end it. Now, if you're dating them and they like a little late or something, cool, give them the benefit of the doubt because that's life. Small things deserve that initially. But as you get to know the person and you get to know who you are with them and they are with you, you guys get to see the experience you create together that you call a relationship, then you can see whether or not this person warrants trust. And then you give them a little vulnerable thing, you see what they do with it, and that's like a little marble in the jar, and you just build that up. And over time, through a variety of experiences, think of it like The Bachelor, where they're putting them all in these really different extreme situations, this is going to coax out the programming of the individual. It's going to coax out their character and how they perceive the world. And now you get to understand whether or not this is a person that lines up with what and how you want in your life. Okay? That's how trust works. Trust is earned over time, over a persistence of pattern of behaviors, and time means, year. If you're dating somebody, a year. Date to understand, date to discover, do not date to commit. This will save you so much pain and grief if you'll honor these 7 principles, both within your life and then work to see them in other people so that you can make more effective decisions about who you choose to be in a relationship with. This is partly how we adjust your picker to pick the right people. Now, underneath that picker is your value, voice, and vision. And in that, you know what you want. You're able to sense it. You're able to hear it. You're able to reliably build connection and love because you love yourself. You're in alignment and harmony with yourself. And that's the power of the happiness strategy. That's what I help my students accomplish in that. So if you're looking to change your world and liberate from codependency and actually be happy again, take the workshop, take my masterclass on the happiness strategy, and then enroll today, and you can start having that very, very quickly. Most clients start to see results within about 4 weeks, and within 6 months they see a very different world because they're living in a very different way. So thank you guys. I appreciate you for showing up. Go out there, build some trust, observe your relationships and see where the trust is functioning, where those 7 principles are functioning, where they're not. If they're not functioning, address them, confront them, have honest discussions about what needs to change. Also do that with yourself so that you're more congruent with you, because when you're congruent with you, you're congruent with your happiness, which means everybody wins, even if somebody else gets a no or gets denied or got to end a relationship or leave something. It always works out in the end. So there you go, guys. I appreciate you. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping, and I will see you for tomorrow's training. Have a great and safe day. See you later. Bye-bye.